All right, good job. We think this is bad for all the women that work in this industry. Reality check, we're not talking about the highlights of Nicki Minaj and this type of thing. We're talking about normal girls that are just in video clips of this type of thing. They do, for example, sexualized dances, that get pennies on the dollar and get coerced to do horrible things like being sexually assaulted or things they don't like. And this is bad for wider society. We reject the premise of the new liberal order that sexualization is always good. We think there's a significant part of the women population that don't agree with it, and we're very proud to stand against this particular thing. First burden, why is the industry likely to coerce you when you're opting into this type of thing? Firstly, notice that this is men-owned. The reason for this is because initially when this industry popped up, men were the ones that had the political and economic capital to prop up these type of things. They have this also continues going forward because they have majority share. They don't sell it out because it's also very profitable. So they're not giving it to other people. But also secondly, rappers themselves who hold on a second, who then themselves were the ones that started doing this type of thing, also evolved to be producers, also evolved to be shareholders, and they are the ones who have a majority stake in this.
Yeah, when does modern start?
I don't care, man. It doesn't matter. Let's say the first probably started in the 80s and stuff like that. Probably this was probably the 80s or 90s. I don't care. Why do they have pernicious incentives? Firstly, they are sexist. This is empirically true. We know it as a fact if we look at the videos that they're promoting. Over-sexualization of women, saying negative things for women, which I'm not going to say because it's a live stream and all of you know what exactly I'm talking about, that are horrible. They themselves, in terms of their interpersonal relationships, have had scandals with women, of which they have sexual interactions and things like that. I'm not sounding like a robot, but this is just because all of you know what I'm talking about, and I don't want to get in this. But secondly, even if they are not sexist, sex unfortunately sells, and they have necessary and incentive to maximize their profit. Which means that this creates a race to the bottom in terms of these companies, basically putting out the more scandalous girl, the more sexualized girl, the new version of these type of things. You know that this happens in Nicki Minaj video, you know that this happens everywhere. But secondly, girls themselves that opt into this type of thing are usually historically oppressed women, so for example, Latinos and Black people, who, unfortunately don't come from the best background in this particular case. They don't have, the best opinion of themselves, the best education. So they don't really have that sort of negotiating power against this type of thing. Again, we're not talking about Nicki Minaj here. We're talking about all the other unnamed girls that are involved in videos that you know what they're doing in many of these cases. This means that they have very little leverage in terms of negotiations, and they agree to very scandalous things. Think about it. For every Nicki Minaj, we have many women that opt in for low pay, seeing pennies on the dollar, things that they don't agree with, and little instances of sexual abuse, both physical and harmful for them. But thirdly, fans of this industry, unfortunately, are majority men in this particular case. These are the viewers. Yes, there may be a trajectory of like more women watching this, but again, we're not talking about just the stars, we're talking about all of the other things and wider society. These men like to see these type of things, like to see the sexualization, like to do this type of thing. You may contest, but this is true in many of these cases. Why is all of this bad? Firstly, just simply economically, you opting into such a dance video may be the reason why tomorrow you don't have a future job. Because your employer doesn't necessarily want to hire a girl who was seen in this particular case because of the reputation that they have. So this means that this actually flips the claim on economic empowerment and it lowers it in the long term for the hundreds of thousands of unnamed women that we're talking about. But secondly, for the ones that succeed, I don't really think that they have a very good time. They force them to do things like over-sexualize themselves, which is morally harmful to them. They force things like, for example, creating beef against each other. Like, for example, the Nicki Minaj versus Megan Thee Stallion beef, which generally lowers their credibility in society. It gives us space for example, trolls and haters to write down things like, you're being a crazy woman and things like this. But thirdly, and I want you to write this down because this truly brings us to actual abuse happens in this type of cases. Actually, women are physically assaulted. Actually, women are sexually assaulted. It doesn't matter what they claim. This is a extreme harm that in any of these cases we won't trade it off. Maybe they could say, but you have recourse in the future. But firstly, these people have huge amounts of money which they can hire lawyers who, make a compelling case in internal meetings and over them cash money, which can't pay on the door, for them to shut up. But secondly, in these cases, there are clauses in the contract itself which limit your agency for you to do this type of things, which the person knows it happening, and that's why these people are very active against this type of case. The response that we make here is, but at least there's some kind of economic empowerment to these women. I have a very big reality check. Not the 1960s. There is general economic empowerment of women. You can get a job. You can work as a waiter. You can work as a nanny. You can work in whatever. Where general, okay, there may be some chance that some of these things may happen to you, but the probability is much less likely because you're still working in a public place. You still have an opt-out. You can go to another place. You're not putting yourself sexual out there. But secondly, there's education for God's sake. Women, for example, also trade school, do all these type of things. But then you might ask yourself, why are women still opting in even if this is a bad decision? Because they're scammed. Like I told you in many cases, these are economically impoverished women, but this usually happens when they're young, when they're impressionable, when they haven't lived so much or had the lived experience, when they promise them the world and then they screw them over in this particular case. This is why this is a net harm for this type of people. Before we get into wider audience, to see how I feel. Oh, they didn't engage. We have the winning point. Wider society. Let's be very clear on something. I think the over-sexualization of women is bad. And let's say we're not talking about the worst case here, that this generally leads to rape or things like that. I think that this blurs the line, you have your chance. No, I think this blurs the line between different sexual interactions that you may have. Because now what men can do, and this is what liberal fucking men in debating and in society in general says, this is empowering you. You're being a queen when you're engaging in this particular case. You shouldn't be against this type of thing, which lends credence to their argument. The more such women engage in this type of thing and this type of behavior, which means that maybe a woman will do something that she's not comfortable. Maybe she'll do something that's not safe for her in many of these cases, like for example, having sex without protection and these type of things. Maybe it could be things like, for example, you're being forced to wear uncomfortable clothes like that are physically uncomfortable to you, and you being over-sexualized. The reason this happens is because the masses of little girls, impressionable, watch these type of videos. They glorify these women. These are role models to them. They're being sold. This is what is an important thing to them. Now, importantly, this may, you may have other narratives that also tell you this, but this still the balance immensely towards this particular direction when you're watching this type of thing, when you're doing this. And again, the reason we win this fight is we're not defending in the 1960s. You can still have a hookup. You can still engage in some kind of promiscuous behavior. Society in general increases their liberalization towards this due to economical development of people and due to progressive values. We just think the balance is tilted, and we would prefer to trade off the agency of these women for maybe a bit more women having a fun time and having sex. For all these reasons, we are government.
I'd like to thank PM for the very fine speech, and I'm happy to call upon leader of opposition.
The reality of the world that we all need to operate in this debate is one of ingrained misogyny, of deep sexualization, and of massive harms to women. That is not something that has arisen as a result of modern rap. That is something that some forms of modern rap might have conveyed, yes, but also something that is now being taken on by precisely the kind of people who can use that medium to spread exactly the sorts of messages we want. I want to start by talking about what is exogenous to this debate, because I think that's really important. Things like Kim Kardashian or body pressure or OnlyFans or strip clubs or the pornography industry are not in this debate. And those are the things that are leading to the exact kind of sexualization of women that opening government perhaps fairly want to oppose. But the claim coming out of opening opposition is that the medium of rap specifically and how it manifests in terms of female rappers gives you the ammunition to push back on exactly that kind of thing. Underlying male misogyny is something that exists in the world, but something that we think is uniquely challenged by the reality of modern rap. So the first thing I want to preempt coming out of opposition is our government is the gut case I thought they were going to run, which is, why does male treatment not change as a result of these harmful messages that come in the rap? I think that rap reflects an existing community and mirrors that, right? It reflects an existing gal culture or an existing attitude towards women, for instance. And so those people, or the people who are singing the most misogynistic, most hardline rap songs, are appealing to an audience who believe in that stuff anyway, and so there's not a significant margin there. What I want to explain then is why modern rap is extraordinarily empowering for women and enables them to push back against exactly the kind of structural misogyny that exists in the world and in these communities. I want to start with some examples of what modern rap looks like. It looks like the city girl movement, for instance, which tells you to emphasize on your own power empowerment as a woman. It looks like Glorilla, for instance, talking about how stupid men are and how they're easy to exploit. It looks like Kia having a song that literally says, trust no man, right? Or Megan Thee Stallion singing about these things as well. And what that means is, that is the reality of what this is. And I want to give the kind of structural reasons why rap has adapted, particularly modern rap has adapted in this way. There are a few reasons why. First of all, there is obviously an existing audience and market for this, namely women, who probably don't want to listen to songs that massively degrade and humiliate them, but who do want to listen to exactly the empowering kind of thing that says that you can just manipulate men for your own ends and get loads of money out of it. Second of all, there are far more female producers in rap over time, for the reason that, for the reason that, some of these rappers become successful, again, parallel to Rumen's mechanism, and so are able to produce this music, people like Cardi B, for instance. But thirdly, and this is crucial, this kind of empowering rap that we're talking about obviously has a far greater appeal, and therefore can make far more money than the hardline misogynistic rap that they want to portray as the majority. The reason is very simple. Society, thankfully, is evolving over time, and so the kind of hardline messages that they're talking about, that also often talk about crime, for instance, those songs, aren't going to have crossover mass appeal. But the kind of songs that we're talking about do have that mass appeal, and so they're far more likely to get funded over time. And yes, maybe some of these rappers start by weaponizing their looks, but that democratizes more and more over time as it becomes clear that the primary audience for this is women themselves. So you have different kinds of women who appeal to all different people, and they compete on that basis insofar as the competitive industry we're talking about, and so they can talk about that. Which means there's a whole bunch of rappers singing about empowerment, singing about how stupid men are, and stuff like that, which I think is good. Dylan.
Just on a point of framing, I think clearly the point that you draw the line from modern rap is after like the MC era of the 80s and the gangster rap era of the 90s towards the 2000s, right? So you have to defend not just the most recent 2 or 3 years.
Fine. Okay. So why does it have to happen through rap and hip hop specifically? Because they can say, well, you should have other genres of song that emphasize this. I think there are a few reasons. First of all, rap is a major genre and crucially has a unique level of penetration in the kinds of minority communities we're talking about where misogyny is rampant. Second of all, rap, and this is crucial, rap as a genre itself emphasizes people's own stories directly. Because rap is not about like melody or stuff like that. It is about the words that are being said within the rap itself and the message that arises as a result of that. And so, insofar as people were able to sing about this, then that's really important. But thirdly, this is crucial. I think that reclaiming something as an idea is extraordinarily powerful. Because what you're doing as these rappers is showing that a genre that had previously had entrenched levels of misogyny and stuff like that can be reclaimed, and within that medium itself, you can sing and have these extraordinarily empowering messages. And that has a massive effect for people on the ground, because it shows that even the places that seemingly would be the most inhospitable for women to thrive can actually be turned into places that are extraordinarily beneficial. So that act of reclaiming in of itself, which is a trend that is happening more and more over the past decade, is something that's extraordinarily important. I want to be clear about what the impacts of this material are. Because, what happens if people will sing a song, listen to a song? Well, I think there are a few different things. First of all, you get far more self-certainty internally and ideas about what it means for you to be empowered. For the reason that obviously you heard that message manifested to you in your song. Second of all, you kind of have the inner space of your own mind that you can interpret the song in to protect yourself and to act against that kind of misogyny. But third of all, this is crucial. Oftentimes, this rap enables you to reconceptualize the trauma that you faced in your old life. And this is where Rumen's material can easily get flipped. Because Rumen says the kind of people who become prominent female rappers have come from these horrible backgrounds and have experienced those trauma. Yes, precisely. They sing about that stuff, and that gives you a model listening to it as to how to escape that trauma and how you can move on from that. And that, I think, is extraordinarily important. The last thing I want to do is weigh this against potential male attitudes towards women getting worse as a result of rap, because that will be the opposition, the government, push. The point is that maybe male treatment of women gets worse, perhaps to some margin, even though it was already starting from a really low baseline. The point fundamentally is that is escapable for you as a woman. You can always choose to not engage with those men or leave that community or whatever it is. What is much more essential for female empowerment is that you have the concepts in your mind and the capacity in your own head to think that you have a genuine pathway out of that you are given a light at the end of the misogynistic tunnel you find yourself trapped in, and songs that tell you that men are morons, that men can be easily exploited and you can gain huge amounts of financial income, giving you exactly that pathway that you need to escape. We are the only team in this debate that gives that pathway out of structural misogyny. That's why it has to be an opening opposition to
Leader of the opposition for the fine speech, and I'm happy to call upon DPM.
Ready.
Nicki Minaj had a song that goes, bitches talk shit, but they ain't saying nothing. And what we think she meant by this is women within the rapping industry who are able to express some sort of opinion, but not the opinion that they themselves want to state. Because they're limited by the men in the industry. That's what government stands for. Government stands on the side of bitches. Couple of responses to LO. First of all, they say OnlyFans, strip clubs, and so on are not. Couple of responses. One, we recognize that those things exist on both sides. But what we're saying is that this industry is a massive gateway into pushing young women into those types of jobs. Why is that the case? Because the way it starts is very small, right? It's small margins that lead you to this particular pathway. First of all, you hear a lot of songs that talk about how great it is to give ratio to men and how that makes you an amazing woman. Then you go, oh, this is what men want from me. This is what is valued in society. These are the women they get praised and they get a lot of money, and men purchase like Birkin bags for them and great clothes for them and take them out on dates and to the and all that sort of stuff. And at one point, that rapper invites you to go dance in his music videos. You agree to do it because there's nothing wrong in it. Then he says, oh, but I also have a modeling agency that you can join. And that modeling agency also does stuff like you have bikini photos, for example. And I also have a club that I own because I'm a famous rapper. Maybe you can come and dance in my club sometime. So it's a massive gateway to these types of behaviors. But recognizing even outside of this, Rumen gives you ample examples as to why women are hurt within this industry without ever going into OnlyFans or any other type of sex work. He tells you they get routinely assaulted and are unable to defend themselves in any legal recourse because of the fact that they're working with literal millionaires who are able to shut them up. The second thing they say, rap reflects existing attitudes. It's not a particularly pernicious thing. Couple of responses here. Number one, classical music doesn't have this narrative towards women, right? You don't see women dancing in bikinis in a classical music concert. The gaming industry doesn't have it. Almost no other industry has it. But also, because we're talking about modern rap in this debate, rap music in the 80s when it was emerging didn't have this type of sexualization of women. It was about you hanging out with your bros and struggles of living in poverty and stuff like that. So they're wrong on this particular thing as well. Then they say, but this is good, and the impact is that you join the city girl movement, which tells you men are shit and they're terrible. Number one, I refuse to accept this stupid debating narrative that calling men garbage is somehow good to society. Men are much more likely to abuse you and treat you badly at a point in which you disrespect them fundamentally as human beings. But secondly, I know it's a controversial take, but men also have feelings, right? You shouldn't be using men as literal things to pay for all of your things and not as human beings who have enfranchisement and emotions. That's probably a bad thing. But secondly, recognize that the city girl movement is also pernicious for all the reasons you mentioned. Why is this the case? because they talk about empowerment and women reclaiming rap. It was never women's in the first place, and that's why they're unable to reclaim it because it is so male dominated. What do you do when you listen to that music? They say you feel empowered, but what are you empowered to do? This is the important thing. Two things here. You are empowered to, number one, go within the male narrative of what your sexual activities and desires should be. You are empowered to think that you are a great woman when you're able to give great fellatio to men. This is what most city girl rap sings about, right? And they're trying to make a differentiation between city girl rap that is empowering and misogynistic rap that is sexist towards women. But what they fail to realize is that those are essentially the same thing. Because men run this industry, they cater to women with the city girl power thing, but it also includes to attract male fans to this particular female rapper, also versus about, oh, I suck a dick so good, I write that dick so good, and all those sort of things. So as a woman, you are coerced into doing all these things that women talks about, participating in sexual behaviors that you might not be comfortable with, dressing in a way that you're not comfortable with, which again perpetrates a very problematic narrative. But secondly, know that these typical types of apps are filled with garbage that tells you the most important thing you can do as a woman is buy a Birkin bag, go to Dubai, and wear Balenciaga. You feel empowered to buy these really expensive, stupid things, and it's because brands are paying for these videos to be made, right? They're literally fabricated in order for you to be able to spend your limited capital, as Roman mentions, because you're from a poor background, instead of investing in yourself, instead of investing in your education, instead of investing in getting better housing, for example, you're incentivized to invest in other things like fucking Balenciaga clothes and bags. But they say, there's more female producers in the industry now. It's good. Yeah, probably there's more than 10 years ago, but it's still about 10%. It's still a vastly male-dominated industry. And here's the reason why this will change. Because fundamentally, rap music is based on a power narrative. A lot of rap music is about, I am better than you, I am more powerful than you. This manifests in a number of ways. It manifests economically. I have more money than you, so I'm better than you. But it also manifests in terms of the male fantasy that I am more powerful, the more female attention that I get. So that's why rappers always rap about, I have so many bitches, I have all those many more bitches as opposed to you do. And this will never change because it's a pernicious male fantasy and it is reinforced by all of the other things within society that these guys talk about that they exist. The thing is, this is the only type of music that still accepts these narratives, and instead of demonizing that type of music, it tries to sell it as empowering to women in order to get them to buy more fucking Birkin bags. The last thing I want to talk about is that this idea about rap is about the message, but it's not so much about the music. And I think this is true, but the fundamental message of most popular rap music, as dictated by the producers and the brands that sponsor the rap videos and the lyrics of the rap music, is fundamentally anti-women, closing my extension.
Why did rap music become popular?
When did music become popular? Because it's good music. I think this is the purpose of the debate. But the thing you need to recognize here is the following, right? You might say rap music became popular when they started sexualizing women. But that's fundamentally untrue. Even in the 90s, that didn't happen as much as it happens now. But secondly, even to the extent that it is true, we care much more about women being hurt in the industry, and we're happy with the rap industry dying out and being substantially less popular. But that means less women are incentivized into going into this type of lifestyle. And here's the last thing that I want to mention, that they gave no actual rebuttal, right? So fundamentally, Rumen tells you that women have a number of opportunities to enter into different fields. What he tells you is that rap music is particularly pernicious because it targets women that are incredibly young. The choices that you make when you're 16, 17, 18, fundamentally define how your life goes throughout the future. So at this point, at which this music incentivizes you to do things like value brands, value your sexualization of your education and your personal image as a woman, is the point at which you're likely to not prioritize school and prioritize the makeup that you wear and the way you look. And that's the point at which you prioritize to buy the expensive clothes and also alter your body and do diets to be more appealing to men. And these things can fundamentally alter your health in terms of diet, but also fundamentally your life impacts in terms of education and your ability to enfranchise yourself. So proud standing on this.
I'd like to thank DPM for his very fine speech, and I'm happy to call upon DLO.
Sorry.
I usually agree with Rumen that sometimes right-wing arguments are underrated in debating, but it's absolutely ridiculous that they try to run an argument about other opportunities and about this being about mentality in the debate. The crux of the debate is not that there is a huge subset of people in the population who otherwise would have had a huge amount of opportunity, who just because they are told about rap and just because they think it's cool are going into things that are actively detrimental for them, for the reason of their own framing that the type of women who enter these industries in the first place face other disadvantages. The part that they don't want to tell you though was that those women have alternatives, usually as being, for example, a stripper, for example, like Cardi B or T. China, who is in the adult entertainment industry, who face that kind of abuse on a day-to-day basis. These people are talking about their real-life experiences because that is what they experience. These women on the comparative are facing rampant sexual abuse by gang members. These people on the comparative are literally treated like shit in this culture. They the only pushback they literally have this would be definition of the debate about what modern means in this debate. I am so sorry, but they couldn't even give you a reason why we got this shift to misogynistic modern rap from their nice, like, let's sit around the table 80s rap. And the reason why is because it is exogenous to the motion. Because what? Because just like things like materialism in these private communities, just like the breakdown of family, just like red zoning policies, they are all exogenous and they've created the realities of the situation for those men, which led to that rap. We are saying that modern rap therefore is good specifically because it gave these women the conduit to fight back against the reality of what they were facing. It is not a trade tool that is the alternative for a woman. It is being a stripper but not having somebody who can tell you that you should trust no. Like anyway, okay, it's gonna be weird, but come on. It is literally having somebody who tells you that these men are scheming so you don't feel gaslit. It is literally when you are facing rampant sexual assault on a day-to-day basis, having somebody who tells you, you know what, don't even worry about it, just get your person back. Because materialism is exogenous, but that is the language that these people speak for the reasons that I already identified. So the question actually in this debate is who gives these people hope? Or at least, who gives them a way to process their trauma? And we agree with Rumen. Like, I would have worked hard to go to Oxford, for example, if I thought that this was the ideal lifestyle. But that's not the point. The point is that when faced with constrained options, it is better, even within misogynistic norms, for these women to say to themselves and to delude themselves that they are winning. It is better for them to say things like that they don't let that person have sex with them, that they are powerful because they just string along and get their Birkin back and don't like let the man even kiss them. It is better for them to feel power through that than to feel no power at all. That is the margin in the debate. And I have to spend 2 minutes on it because it's been pissing me off. Firstly, I want to explain why this debate is not about wider society. No, thank you, Rumen. First, when we talk about the mainstream, they either have really stronger or larger in number socializing tools towards things like getting a good job or feminism. 1, their social status. 2, their parents and communities who often lead them down alternative routes and alternative lifestyles. But 3, they are more amenable to wide, other mainstream narratives and more engendered in education in the first place. And so this is unlikely to be the tipping point for some middle class white girl becoming like somebody in this industry. Secondly, or alternatively, they have strong alternative force away from feminism. So, for example, the anti-hate movement or the manosphere is exogenous for young men. The question then is, for the subset of women that we are talking about, that is why is that the only unique thing in the debate? The reason it's the only unique thing in the debate is because it's only these women who aren't amenable to widespread narratives because they've been so isolated from wider society, like the rest of their community, that they needed a specific narrative which spoke to them. None of the opening government at no stage actually proved that you get any margin more people who are joining these industries, that you make any, the fact that you can become a rapper means that you're far more likely to face the abuses that they identified. All they were able to do is prove and explain why these industries have tendencies towards misogyny, which doesn't actually prove a marginal difference. What was the marginal difference? The first thing that we told you when it came to the treatment of these women is that these women, in and of their own right, because of the way that rap works, emphasize their personal stories, and because of the way that modern rap has worked and has evolved, it is all about proving that you are superior, proving that you do have power. And so they have taken that from the men. But the way that they have taken that from the men is to say, for example, that they don't even give the men sex in the first place, that the men are useless and the men are shit. Opening government says, oh, but what about men stealing? I don't give a fuck because it is It helps these people with the extreme trauma that they face because of the reality of their situation. Then they're like, oh, but it's like, but you're going to be in the background of the video and it's going to ruin your alternative job prospects. Given that I've already told you what the likely alternatives are for the women that this narrative speaks to more, we think that it's unlikely. But just as an intuition check, is appearing in the background of the video, which marginally diminishes your chance of going to trade school, given that you're unlikely to have had that option in the first place, a more important impact in the debate than large swathes of women who might not even be in the most extreme cases feeling this, but feel the minor issues. For example, just like the rampant misogyny in relationship in the community, feeling a sense of being heard, and feeling a sense that there are women speaking to them. Can these things realistically weigh as less significant? We think not. Yes, please.
So we agree that there's a significant economic disenfranchisement of particularly Black women. How do they overcome this through this industry? How are they able to get autonomy in their songwriting, etc.?
Look, I think there are two unique things here. The first is on our comparative, these people become celebrities when they become famous, and yes, that means that sometimes they engage in beef with other celebrities, but it also means that they get a persona in their own right. Because, as I said, rap emphasizes your own personal stories. They become the brand in and of themselves, and that gives them a point of power. The Aniket's mechanism about producers, given the comparative for people like Cardi B with being a stripper, for example, I think that's a really good thing. And given that they don't prove a margin that people from the mainstream are now going to enter these industries, I think that's the only comparative thing in the debate. But secondly, we don't need to prove that the industry isn't misogynistic in order to win the debate. We just need to prove that women constrained in a misogynistic culture and constrained by misogynistic society are making a choice which empowers them, or at least allows them to deal with the trauma which comes from that misogyny. We're not claiming that we're going to solve the misogyny. We're just claiming that this is far superior, and having these narratives is far superior. The final thing I want to talk about is what the nature of that messaging is likely to be. Because if you believe them, you just believe that it's all women just like having every right that a man right to them and they have no agency. And it's clearly untrue insofar as the emphasis on rap is the power of the individual and the celebrity idol worship of the individual. That is why beef can happen between rappers in the first place, because they build up independent bases and power. Not only does it at least the women need to feed out of it gives other women a chance to deal with their trauma. That matters more.
Thank you, DLO, for the fine speech. I'm happy to call upon member of government.
We think it's those arguments that modern rap and hip hop has two significant points. One is that the materiality inherent to the genre has disenfranchised women in that space and led to a bunch of harms on the list. Second, we think it leads to a construction of a hegemonic masculinity that leads to objectification of women, possessive understandings of women in those spaces, domineering nature of society. Firstly, I want to do 3 points of framing. Firstly, just want to really clarify, I'm looking specifically about hip hop, not say pop music, right? Comparative. And there's some actually fundamental aspects of hip hop and rap that haven't been addressed in the top half as of yet. Given that there's a lack of understanding as to why, say, for example, Janelle Monáe, the pop artist, couldn't achieve a lot of the things that opening opposition are talking about, I think there's a flaw in the top half thus far. Secondly, I think very few women oftentimes become like MCs. Not to diminish the arguments posed in the top half, I think are certainly important. We're going to explain harms to a much wider group of women, but the people that are treated by, or listen to this music and treated by men who listen to this music. Also note that we're going to be talking a lot about male rappers talk about women, which is something that has been addressed very much in the top half. The third thing is that, kind of what opening else I should tell you, music and culture, of course, impacts how people interact with people. They say these are just purely caused by exogenous factors. I just don't think that this is fair, right? Like, past 60 years of social theory and communication theory would disagree with that. They say amputation exogenous, but the point is, whether you had, for example, Black liberation and female liberation being seen as, connected struggles, where you must interact with one another and support one another to be able to liberate those spaces, or whether people were amenable, like Black men were amenable to people like Andrew Tate, based off of the priming that happened as a result of things like culture. Yes.
You guys define pre-modern rap as the 80s and say that modern rap includes male misogyny. Why did that trend occur?
Sorry, keep that in here.
You guys define pre-modern rap as the family-friendly 80s and modern rap including misogynistic rap. Why did that trend occur?
I'm not gonna lie, open government defined it that way. Like, I think they're wrong, so I just know that. Okay, materiality, for a second. Hip hop materially creates asymmetries here. The first reason is the historical context of sampling. Obviously, all music sample based. It comes from previous songs that are being chopped up and put up in new songs. And the ownership of those samples is in the record industry's hands. So originally, historically, MCs would just when cheap tapes and multi-cheap vinyls got brought out, MCs would rap over them in parties, which became the genre. The problem, though, is that in order to sell that, make a commercial happen along, say, the 90s to the 2000s, you had to be able to clear the samples, what's called, which relied on record industry consent. The problem, though, is that, of course, people can't individually have the wealth, particularly like female black women, to clear the samples themselves. So they have to enter into a very under-leveraged contract with the record labels, which means that after they texted the record labels, really you didn't say this. You just didn't, right? You talked about just music in general. Second thing, though, is there's a historical barrier to entry relying on effect. A big problem with production is that production is masculinized in its conception. Just to say, it's treated as a technical craft more like computer science. So very few women are received well in like production spaces, like Reddit, like subreddits for it and that kind of thing. Women are treated very poorly there because it's seen as a masculinized thing. So very few women produce these things as well. They're mostly seen as performers, who are seen as more feminine in society, broadly speaking. The important thing there, there's also a historical barrier without I can't always talk about it. The importance of this is that the culture industry was able to frame songwriters, right? People write your songs for you, or the music video directors, or just things like, all the ways that you present your album art, that kind of thing. And I think an important thing here to clarify for the top half is I think a lot of the back and forth between female sexual liberation and exploitation happens through gaze. How your sexuality is framed. Is it framed subjectively as something that you're doing in and of yourself and for your own ends, for your own stories, or is it something that's done objectively, framing you as an object not to be possessed? And given that all of the intertextual things, not textual, secondary textual things there, right? So the framing that we just talked about there, all frames women in that sort of objective light based off the record industry, probably not later degrees. It means that you don't have this happening. The second thing that I think is important to say is this open competition, as the open competition argue, they say perceived as personal stories and autonomous. It is very hard to get liberty in those spaces. You're not getting long-term contracts, you often have a lot of long-term record deals, where you can't call them out. Because if you say, yes, my songwriters are doing these things for me, a video director is doing these for me, it goes contradictory to your own narratives of independence in those spaces. It makes it very hard for you to call out those kinds of things. It's also neat that the female liberation that happens in these songs comes after the cultural cachet, when the consumer base is already amenable to these things happening, because it's based off of not individual stories, but those kinds of things. Opening opposition asks why it's imperative. This is why, because this is an important culture industry thing. Second argument on how men talk about women in hip hop. So there's the history here is one of a cultural revolutionary test, similar to things like, for example, ballroom or drag, where people that are historically dispossessed of materiality display excess as a revolutionary act. The problem is that if that happens in a masculinized sphere, where women are seen as items to be possessed, part of that comes into it. So women are seen as objects owned by male rappers, which is why they talk about it in different ways. You can say this, it's on screen, don't see it. Second thing is about the construction of black masculinities. Historically, men, like black men, have been reduced to body and form and seen in historically like animalistic depictions and that kind of thing, where they're reduced to their base origin sexuality in wider depictions of them. Insofar as it becomes pervasive throughout media, it's oftentimes inculcated, or at the very least, it's what reaches a wider audience, and what people are receptive to. The combination of these two things means that even, conscious rappers or lyrical rappers oftentimes speak about women in hardly demeaning ways, and oftentimes are even framed through the lenses of black liberation. This obviously brings how men perceive you, oppositional to a lot of counteracting social norms. We've seen liberalization happening over, say, the last 20 years, over which this space might take place. This is counteracted against that. It forces you into a double binary identity as a black woman, for example, because there's hermeneutically you're told that you people for whom you have a degree of like trust and authority to speak about some of your experiences also speak about you in these kinds of objectified ways, which forces you an internal tension which is often difficult to deal with. But also, of course, chills call outs and that kind of thing, not only because the idol worship that I would talk about. It's very hard to criticize Kendrick Lamar after T-Pop and Grammy if you speak about some of your titles, but not all of them, right? Also, an important secondary point to this is that it frames how men treat women, because heterosexual men, under this lens, value things like sexual dominance, power of possession, even more so than they would have done otherwise, and more likely to act out in aggressive or hostile ways towards women. But also insofar as this constructs men's masculinity around other men, it means that they have to perform this kind of in this kind of way, masculinized way, to those men. Oftentimes meaning they have to therapize their partners, or they only be vulnerable with them and talk about them quite consistently. I think the nuance and specificity of closing government's arguments on this.
Thank you, member of government, for the very fine speech. Now I'm happy to call upon member of the opposition.
Songs of freedom don't have to sound nice to everyone. Sexualization is an unfortunate reality that does exist on both sides of the house. The question is, what are we going to do about it, and what are the power structures that can change anything? The main contribution we're going to give you is that modern rap has allowed for women to be able to gain unique axes of power, both in terms of how they're able to express themselves, but also unique power within the music industry that otherwise would not have existed. Let's start with expression. I think that there's a unique way that you can express yourself as a result of modern rap. I would say that you can tell women a lot of great messages, but I think that a lot of the opening government responses work against us to some degree, about the industry structures being ones that are going to marginalize women to a significant degree. So if these women are, as Rumen says, getting pennies on the dollar, then even if it's the case that they become rappers and therefore they can try and own, as Aniket says, then I'm not sure that that's able to give them the level of power necessary to be able to get in. So I'm not sure the OO analysis does enough to prove here that women have enough power within the industry to get the messages that they want. Let's tell you why that's the case. First of all, I would note, and the reason I've been asking leading POIs about the rise of rap music is that oftentimes rap music grows up as countercultural protest music. This is Fuck the Police coming out at the time of the Emmett Till case. These cases of police brutality in response to them. And so this music oftentimes be response to forms of anger. This is important because oftentimes this is not the stuff that is the most socially amenable, right? This is stuff that maybe you don't want to be putting on the radio. This is the stuff that sort of the popular record labels don't exactly love chanting themselves on because they're worried they're going to lose money, especially back in the day when printing CDs was an actual upfront cost as opposed to what it is today. Second of all, counterculture. Oftentimes the messages in these music is things that you're okay with being different to what you would otherwise hear. These things being assertive alter egos far more than the confidence that any normal person would demonstrate in their day-to-day life. This is aggressive braggadocio. This is a diss track saying ruder things than I'd say to any of you in this room. I think that these things oftentimes lead that there's being a much greater ability for you to do kind of critique and different kinds of messages than would otherwise be there, which is what gives women the unique power to be able to put a sexualized message forward where other forms of media are unable to create the grounds for these kinds of messages. But third of all, the infrastructure for this, which is something I'll explain a little bit more later, but I think what I want to take away from this is that in other genres of music, in other media, published books, newspaper articles, and everything else, there's a need for you to conform and be family friendly. Rap does not have those things, and that gives the ability to tell these stories. And what this should show you is that these messages, the way that they are, cannot exist without modern rap. O identifies that female consumers exist, but these female consumers are not enough. Bargaining power that is generated as a result of, first of all, these messages being palatable in the first place within modern rap, as I just told you, but second, the precedent existing of these kinds of things, you being able to point towards male rappers and saying, hey, look how well Fuck the Police sold. That's why a song about, for example, female sexuality and empowerment can sell, is the way that you're able to get credence on these things. Second, let's talk about unique power in the industry. No, women. Opening government says that men hold the power because of patriarchy and because of male rappers. Fun fact about rap, the wheels of power are grassroots. These are releases of mixtapes. This is hype culture that allows these things to be able to get power. This is blogs and passing around these things like underground. Oftentimes record labels that are owned by the artists themselves, they use to promote these kinds of things. And I would note, the response to this, I mean, we do get some response to this, but like about the idea that there's some power that does exist in the industry. But I think first, note that the most powerful record labels are a fraction of the rap industry, at least at the beginning, relative to the volume of music released. Like pop music is a very small amount of the music that is generally released, right? The rap industry leads a lot of music being released as a sort of counterculture or protest, and then a lot of it rises up to the top. Many of those artists, for example, have independent labels. Look at Cardi B having an independent label. Look at artists like Tyler the Creator and Megan Thee Stallion buying back their masters and releasing them independently. I think that these things then mean that a lot more of these women are able to be taken seriously, they can negotiate with their A&Rs, and they are legitimized within the industry because of the power they're able to hold. How exactly does this end up happening? First of all, I think we have a normalization effect of a lot of these stars being women. And so that's been able to mean that when you know that you have a proving ground, when you know you can get in and you can be powerful, then you can negotiate more because you know you have a power here, and so therefore you're not going to just acquiesce to whatever demands are made on you. Second, there's a lot of critique around the existing abusing dynamics. Look at the dynamic between, for example, Aaliyah and her record label, which was widely lambasted because of how famously abusive it was. That kind of thing not only means that other people will not enter those things because the critique and skepticism around it is the reason why other women would not opt in, but that critique is also then lobbied from other individuals in the media toward the record labels so they don't repeat those kinds of dynamics. Third of all, I think that we are able to get things like more women within the industry themselves, which I'll talk about in a moment, which leads to a more nuanced version of self-objectification, not only from the artists, but because these women would then themselves work for things like hiring like more costume directors or creative directors that are also women and being able to get them into the industry. But fourth, there's been a critique that rap was going away from its roots of being self-industry, like self-perpetuated, and trying to do things like establishing free or cheap distribution services that allow you to get CDs into stores and songs from Spotify. This is where things like CD Baby and DistroKid started. Otherwise, the gatekeepers like having the power, so they would never let the place know any random person release this music. So what this means is that now, as a result of this push and the counterculture of rap, the power for anybody to release any song that they want was a consequence of this. Why is this important? I think that without this, that means that you would have a gatekeeping effect where you could not get as many of these people into the industry. And before I explain the impact of this, I do want to deal with the one response we get from Dylan to this, which is that women don't have to wealth their samples. One, this created the infrastructure of getting music around without formally releasing it. So you don't have to be able to go to the record labels in order for you to be able to get your song out. Second, people often recreate the instrumentals, and most of these are people who wouldn't pursue legal action because they're too small. But third, the skills that you would gain, for example, from being somebody who's helping another woman run a grassroots record agency is like, for example, yeah, sure, go for it.
Why is it worth it for one woman to succeed by conforming to the abuse in the industry?
I'll respond to this, don't worry. Yeah, but the thing is that, like, for example, if another woman helped you out, that's an A&R who's hired by, for example, Universal into the future because they can still get those skills. That's a large music firm where you're the only one who can say with rap music that they're chancing on whether this is worth it or not. And so you get a lot more power, you can take a lot more chance with female artists, and you get a lot more bargaining power. Let's explain what this does to the debate. First, you hire a lot more directors, videographers, and photographers who are just women. These people are within the industry now and talk to the women that opening government is talking about and say you have a way out. They can offer you a freelance position. They can tell you to be scared of these things and to step away, so that means that their harm no longer takes place as a result of this glorification. Second, more ability for women to control these things. Maybe in the past things were bad, but after Aaliyah's death, after her proximity to prominent artists, that is when women stopped opting in and went their own way. We fixed this dynamic and created a model of success that is proving right for other women in different genres, or hope that's the way out. So therefore, even as bad in the past, modern rap has been instrumental in fixing this across the music industry and its response to CG, because they are the powerful ones who can call out the problem and bad depictions. Third, given that sexualization happens on both sides of the house, specifically as women's color been diminished, for example, within beauty standards, this now gives you the ability to change those things and to create new narratives around it. This is an exclusive message. There's plenty of messages that say fuck men, and it's the only message that gives comparative power.
Speech, and I would like to call upon the government
No, sorry, mine's empty.
Thank you so much. What to go there in this speech. First, on the artists and what does the modern rap and hip hop structure of producing looks like. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the broad societal conception and how we are making it better. First question then, how does the modern rap and hip hop producing look like? The opening government case here is just that women are often sexualized in these videos, and there are coercive men who might be forcing them to do bad things. I think that to give it the opening opposition, I think they are pointing out this is true for many careers. In fact, possibly for those that many of those women would have to opt in otherwise. I would also know that even it's not even unique to modern hip hop in terms of in comparison to other music. This was case long before hip hop. They say classical music doesn't have it. Yes, but pop music does have it. You would have coercive men. You would have women being sexualized in videos. None of this is actually comparative to, it's unique to modern hip hop. It's not even unique to general life, right? Many times women have to deal with coercive male bosses, controlling boyfriends, pressure to be wearing certain clothes later on. So the question you should be asking just after opening government is just whether the conditions in any other career are substantially different if the woman that would go to hip hop would be better off anywhere else. Opening government and closing government try to give you a few reasons, and I think that we deliver them relatively well. What do we say? So opening government says if there's a billionaires, billionaire labels, and closing government is not certificate and it says long-term contracts and you are locked in and you're getting nothing. I think what Wajeeh explains is that uniquely in rap and hip hop, this is not the case, while it is the case in loads of other different music careers. The reason is, and I will just point out that there's zero response to that properly in Emily's speech, is that the industry developed as a counterculture. That is that the traditional large record labels did not want to be engaging with this type of music, especially at the beginning at all. Maybe now they are jumping on it partially, but the way that the infrastructure, the way that this is produced, the way that it is disseminated, developed in the first place, is that there is a lot of grassroots, underground, the fact that you can put out independent mixtapes, that you can engage with the culture in all different ways that are not necessarily traditional large labels, because that was what was important to develop in order to get that music running. This means that, and even if now maybe some people still large labels probably obviously currently do produce hip hop, but by the time they put that artist on, they are already famous through the grassroots. They are already rich. They already do have the leverage. That is not so it's not the case that both opening government and closing government are describing. But the second thing it addresses is the thing about from closing government that the reason why it's uniquely coercive is because the people are not rich and therefore they can't have the leverage. We explain that you do not have to be rich because specifically how that industry is structured, right? Because you often have access to things like beats that you don't even have to buy them. If you have to buy them, then they're not that expensive, right? You can reuse and use your specific track with that. The fact that you don't need to be targeting labels in order to disseminate your music in the first place. So that does respond to the closing government claim. Closing government doesn't respond to ours. Wajeeh also explains why that allows for more women to be taken in, and crucially also set examples through the critique I'm going to talk about in a bit on the other industries that have gotten better. It's also due to the second mechanism of opening government, there's a power fantasy of these men and they don't want to let it go. But given that we explain how decentralized it is, then even if they have that power fantasy, then we are able to still challenge it by acting independently. Why is this important and how you want to weigh it against opening opposition? Opening opposition says that they didn't actually really contest that the industry is bad. They say the industry might be bad, but it's not comparative, and at least you can feel good and kind of delude yourself. We analyze that the modern hip hop and rap is uniquely good, better than any comparative in the way they structured and organized. So we are reaching a higher impact than opening opposition. But also we are specific to hip hop and rap. I think the closing one correctly points out that neither of the top halves actually are. The second thing that I want to talk about, I didn't go.
Off-bench and CG, in typical fashion, pretend that we never proved that this increases abuse, that note, we would never trade off against any benefit due to the nature of the harm. Please compare.
Well, where did you say increases abuse? You said that it is abusive. The reason it's billionaires, I literally just explained one, that there is uniquely not as much true in this industry. Secondly, I think opening opposition points out that this is case in the industry that they would have done otherwise. Literally every other team just beaten the thing that you said. Okay, perception of women. The opening government claim first is that the sexualization and the objectification is giving credence to the argument that sexist people make that women wants to be seen that way. Just again, the marginal impact of this is incredibly small. Like, I'm not sure who is this person who would stop being sexist or stop being sexist because they've seen Nicki Minaj. Like, if you believe that women are sluts at your disposal, then you don't need that agreement and consent to think that. Just by definition, that makes no sense. So So because of that, you have Andrew Tate saying that women secretly want that, even if they are not saying it themselves. So I really don't think there's any marginal difference on that. The second thing they say is going to incentivize women to act this way, and that's bad. So I think opening opportunity gives a good reason that this is not all the overriding narrative of all other narratives in the society. But I just want you to listen to the way that opening women analyze it. Now, it's going to force women to want to suck dicks. I don't know, is enjoying sex a bad thing just because they are saying that? Women are told that they're meant to be engaging in those things anyway, but at least now you're able to see and that it's meant to be enjoyable, and that's a way that you can that you can question it. Or buying bags is a bad thing. I don't know. I think people are being made happy by it. They're actually fair to do it. The second thing they also explain is that while modern rap and hip hop is explicitly able to talk about a lot of things beyond just saying men are charged and bags are cool, right? Because hip hop and rap uniquely allow much more openness, because the boundaries are already wide pushed, right? You can say things pretty open, you can use explicit language, you can be aggressive, you can do alter egos or whatever stuff. This means that the critiques that you are producing can be hitting hard and challenging the norms also everywhere else. Because this also goes beyond all, because they're just talking about the fat man guy, explain that there's a specific thing about rap and hip hop. And you can also critique the industry. Listen to Radko's intro. It's Nicki Minaj critiquing the industry. If they're all backed by billionaires, why can't you even say? Second thing, as Posiman points out, often Black and Hispanic women are already seen as over-sexual because they don't fit with the 50s cute white girl persona. The problem is before it was seen as something that is unattractive and bad, but now you have the popularity of this music showing it as something that is attractive, something that you can make you feel good about, and that other people can also perceive as attractive. I think uniquely, this is better than any alternatives, and it's done good for both the artists and the general societal perception. I'm proud of it.
Speaker so much for the fine speech. Thank you everyone for enjoyable round. This is a closed round, so you can just go to socials.
Sorry, everyone.